here's a video not a single soul asked for, and a video nobody wanted, on a topic everybody's forgotten about except maybe 10 people on Tumblr every 413, and a few hundred Discord people. Homestuck. Yeah, I can't imagine that this is going to do well in YouTube Studio. At least I hope it doesn't, because there's no fucking shot in hell that I'm going to become a Homestuck YouTuber. Not only has that ship sailed, it was never even plausible in the first place. Kinda like a majority of Homestuck character ships among the fans.
Good lord!
Anyway, time to stop padding this video with intentionally dogshit jokes, at least I hope it's time for that, to increase the runtime, because I thought it was a great idea to talk about Homestuck, even though about 30% through production on this video I wanted to scrap it, but here we are. Anyway, quite simply, this animation is not going to work.
Happy birthday, bro! Did the beta come yet?
Good luck to you, buddy, and stay away from my son or I'll kick your ass.
It's not going to be good, or at the very least it won't be good conventionally. I imagine that this will be a decent hate watch.
What?
Oh
What?
God.
You probably need no help for them.
What?
But, well, I guess I'll just start explaining why. I think this is going to be abysmal dog shit, and it's just not going to be good. Not just because it's made by these people, which honestly is bad enough, but no, regardless, I have another less low-hanging criticism to poke at here. Something else that I was thinking about when I was watching the trailer, and just thinking about Homestuck as a whole. Since I too was one of those people back in the day that made shitty jokes, still do actually, drew a few insane troll sonas that looked like something a Newsmax watching Facebook addicted old head would expect to be in a school shooter's manifesto. And when I coped my ass off that the genocidal fish alien Harry Potter allegory gag character was going to get a serious redemption arc. And I actually did believe that. But anyway, for real, to get back on track again, since this video is already starting to be written about as well as 90% of Homestuck, the trailer was very not good at all. Personally, I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. It took less than 10 seconds of me watching it for me to come to the conclusion that the dialogue for this shit was best case scenario, but the bar is already touching bedrock. And by that I mean Homestuck is not something that can actually be adapted to an animation, to anything really, to this extent, and be conventionally a good product. I'm sure it'll be funny, not in the way the creators intended, but one of those things that's going to be so fucking bad and awful. That to some there will probably be a certain degree of charm, and I am regrettably going to hate watch it myself. I'm gonna do that. I will say the trailer was seemingly as well adapted as you could get, kinda, but it still misses the point entirely. And the limited nature of animated storytelling, at least when compared to the webcomic, is going to cut out a lot of what made Homestuck good in the first place. While it is true that the dialogue for the show is already going to be particularly awful, in the sense that I imagine it's going to be curse words funny and snarky Redditor millennial dialogue the whole time.
Has it? I've been trying to avoid him, as you can well imagine.
Jan, you're not wearing one of your silly disguises, are you?
Look in the sky, numbnuts!
I'm not personally here to criticize it for that. That is a criticism of mine, and I guess I'm already kind of implementing it in this video, but I'm more so disinterested in this as a product that will be good quality, because Homestuck's shining achievement was always in the community-driven storytelling, at least until Hussey finally took the reins, sometime later in the comic, which I guess wasn't always for the best. But a large part of early Homestuck was entirely, like I guess, canon headcanon, as dumb as that sounds. And I'm sure there's a better word for it, but I don't know what that word is right now at the moment. But anyways, sure, Hussey was the creator and did the drawings, and each of the characters already had more or less their own personality. And a certain degree of information we already knew about them. But the large appeal, the main thing for me at least, and I know for a fact many others, was in that these characters were also partially, sometimes greatly influenced by your own ideas, you the person reading. the personalities you could give them, so it was almost like your own personal story in some ways. Like, to me, Dave wasn't just tee-hee layers of irony, man. I started to develop my own idea for him, where they were actually a legitimately cool person, but it was still unintentional, or usually accidental. As he was trying to figure himself out through some of the story and maybe didn't have their own identity, and that was what they were trying to find. Like, Dave wasn't just ironically cool, to me. That was a large part of his character, obviously. A part of him was just straight up cool, I guess. And I imagined he talked in a really non-emotive way, maybe some kind of way of sounding cool that he thought was cool, and maybe it just did sound cool. I don't know. It's been a while, but I had my own interpretation of him and all these other characters that I enjoyed from the webcomic. At the time, I could almost guarantee that nobody else shared my exact headcanon or idea for these characters, but it didn't matter because by Homestuck's very design early on, it was still canon for me, and anybody else's interpretation was canon for them, and that made the storytelling for Homestuck, at least at the time, kinda just really neat, and I think that's what sold it for a lot of people. It was a build-your-own story that was actually done correctly enough that it still has a pretty large following even today. I somewhat equate it to H.P. Lovecraft storytelling, where, for so many of the stories, the appeal is that the overall bad force, or the monsters, are never entirely described or revealed. And why a lot of cosmic horror is ruined is because the monster is revealed completely. In this comparison, the monster is ruined because the user can no longer project their own fears onto the faceless monster, the force of evil, that you can't really describe. It's an unimaginable horror or some other shit like that. But once the mask is off and you see what it is, you can't project your fears onto it anymore. It is something that you either were already scared of in the first place, or it's something you might find really, really fucking silly. And I compare this to Homestuck because a lot of the characters in Homestuck, and even to some extent the storytelling, were entirely dependent, even if just subconsciously, on your own interpretation of many of the characterizations. Like, yeah, sure, you already knew a lot about them. John was nerdy and Dave was in his own way cool, etc., but you still would add your own ideas to them. And because they were still mostly blank slates, which is funny to say considering many of these characters were overly wordy, but it didn't matter, because you could still come up with your own ideas for how they said those words, how they sounded when they said those words, what they actually meant by those words, etc. I mean, shit, you had to use your imagination because they all looked like this. And I just don't think that the animation is going to do this magical aspect of Homestuck any good. And I guess this leads me to my next complaint, and that the humor and wordiness of Homestuck is also going to be a problem. Too much of Homestuck is paragraphs upon paragraphs, and a great deal of Homestuck is fourth wall breaking to such an extent that you can't even tell when the fourth wall breaking fucking ended if you're not paying complete attention. This is gonna get old really fucking fast to a lot of people. Like, even Deadpool limits himself to a certain degree, and the movies still have the wherewithal to let other characters come in when a situation needs to be serious, or at least as serious as any newer pre-Iron Man 1 Marvel movie can get. But there is no realistic way to cut enough of that out, or even to include enough of any of Homestuck to make for a cohesive product that won't just devolve into goofy bullshit. And at that point, even if you get something to work, it still won't technically be Homestuck, it'll just have the name slapped on it. I guess for me and many other people, Homestuck today is something I say I mostly don't care about. And I don't, for the most part, but realistically, I'm going to keep talking about it till the day I'm gone, and a part of it is going to stick with me. There are aspects I do still enjoy. I could still remember also what drew me to it back in the day. And I believe that the animation is just maybe digging up something that should have been left alone. I truly just believe that Homestuck was designed in such a way that shouldn't be adapted to anything else other than another medium that allows heavy user interaction and heavy user contributions. Like a game. And even then, it simply just works best on its own. Homestuck is a product that was designed in such a way that a large part of it was your own influence over the storytelling. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And unfortunately, I just kinda think that due to the nature of Homestuck and the people writing the animation, it's going to be a soup of curse words and overbearing eye-rolling self-deprecation and obnoxious millennial dialogue where nothing is taken even remotely seriously, and over time it'll just end up as something that is forgotten about. just like the Homestuck sequel. I bet you didn't know that existed, most of you at least, and just like the Homestuck game. And I know for some people, they might have some criticisms to this video, like, oh, you're clearly wrong, because a lot of Homestuck had animations. They had animations with only action scenes and no words. That's the difference. Those animations were very short. They didn't go on for super long, like Cascade. And the characters didn't speak. They didn't have audio when they did say something. It was supposed to represent a large event in the story where something was changing and the tide was turning and it was a big fight, or something like that. It wasn't the entirety of Homestuck. So I'm going to immediately disregard that point because it's fucking stupid, with all due respect. And with that, I'm going to be honest, I'm just kind of done talking about Homestuck now. So with that being said, lads, I hope you all have a great one.